Welcome to Life by Design, episode 383. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by a special guest. We are creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, I'm on with Kyle Torrance. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, great to see you again. I know that we've had you on the show in the past, long time ago at this point. I think it's been a few years.
It has been a few years, yeah.
So things have changed. Life has moved forward. But I think we're going to have a great conversation today about accountability. Before we do, I'll let you introduce yourself. I'll give you a quick nod here. Kyle's one of the owners and head coach at CrossFit 613. That's how I know Kyle. And we've had a hand together in working on the Move by Design training system. So we thought, hey, let's get back on a podcast right now with all of the online training and nobody in the gym. You know, accountability is a really tough thing. So Kyle, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm the co-owner of CrossFit 613 in Ottawa. We've been open for about 7 years now, which is pretty wild.
Yes.
Time flies by.
I remember meeting you for the first time at the little gym there you were running, and I did the workout with Mike, and he introduced us, and here we are 7 years later.
Yeah, we've come a long way since those days training in that little, 800 square foot space that we had, I think, at that point.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been there for about 7 years, and it's been quite an experience for me. You know, I really dove into the health and fitness industry during my university days, and it was through CrossFit is really what started that for me. Right. You know, as a 19-year-old ex-athlete, it really satisfied that competitive need that you have, and just crushing yourself all the time. That's a conversation we can have now.
Yes,
exactly. The value of that, but at the time, that was really what sparked my interest. And back in that day, CrossFit was so new; nobody really knew exactly what they were doing. So there was one gym, I think, in Ottawa at that point, and being a poor university student, I couldn't afford to go there. So programming for me became something that I started to do right off the bat. I would sit down for hours and study what to do and how to write my workouts. And that was really what guided me into getting into the programming realm and into the fitness world.
Nice. And so now fast forward 7 years later, you're like I said, co-owner, head coach, married, daughter, got the family.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit different now. The life work balance changes a little bit from those days of opening your business, 12, 14 hour work days. And you got to change that up a little bit now too.
Yes. Oh man. How things have changed. And so, I know a bit about your facility just through Mike, our mutual friend. Mike's one of the other co-developers of Life by Design, one of the co-owners of CrossFit 613. And I know you guys are super successful. You've got a packed house there, you've got a great community, but now suddenly during this time, nobody can go to the gym. And so, what has that been like for you guys? What have you heard from your members in terms of the challenges and struggles going from, seeing you multiple times a week to not being able to see you guys at all?
Absolutely. Such a big part of our gym is the community, right? And a lot of people come into the gym, obviously for the workouts. They kind of speak for themselves at this point, but it's also being able to see other people and have that dynamic of training with other people. That's a big draw. So all of a sudden that gets pulled from you and you're kind of left to think, well, now what do I do? I've never worked out on my own before. How does this work?
Right.
And it's definitely been a learning experience for us, because we haven't had any online offering before this, to really pivot basically our entire business model and push it out in about a week's time before we completely lose engagement from our community to make sure that they're keeping some sort of a routine.
Right. And still in that sense, figuring out a way to create a training system and an offering that is still valuable to them. I know that's got to be the difficulty. For you or I training at home, sure. Like we can find anything, you're looking at, the banister in your house and you're doing pull-ups or dips on the stairs and, you figure it out. But you're right. For the average person who's just, more recently into fitness, they're not really sure what to do. And I think anytime there's a lack of clarity, there's always going to be a fall off in terms of their accountability and their action. So, the first question, and you kind of alluded to this in our pre-show and some of the notes we went back and forth on, but you've seen that, and we can talk about how you get to this, but you've seen that, when your clients have a bigger why, especially I like you said, kind of in terms of exercise specifically, you find that, the adaptability for them is much better.
Absolutely. And this is something that we have been able to really start doing more, is actually working in a coaching experience that goes beyond just teaching exercise movements. This has been an opportunity for us to expand our coaching really in a more holistic perspective. So really encouraging people to spend some time now and reflect on what is their why around their movement, and try to dig a little bit deeper beyond, some of more of the surface answers that we get. I want to lose weight, or I want to have a little bit more lean muscle. All great goals to have. Sure. But if we can kind of plug away and get a little bit deeper down to the root, we might find a purpose that has more value specifically to you. And we can use that as an anchor when the motivation starts to wean a little bit, which it inevitably will at some point.
And it does for all of us. I think it's important to note that as long as you and I have been training and doing fitness, there's days where, it's not at the top of our list. And of course, we come back to it very quickly because of the why and the depth of our why. What have you heard? And I think it'd be helpful for people listening to maybe get some examples, but in your online coaching that you've done to this point, what, if a couple of examples have come up where people have got into their why, and what type of whys have you uncovered that were surprising to people and maybe even surprising to you?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones, we have a community very family oriented. And one of the big ones that comes up a lot for us is, especially right now with kids being at home, is I want to be able to keep up with my kids. I want to be able to have the energy that I need to be with them all day at this point, right? And that's a change of pace if your kids have been in school or daycare and you have that time off. Getting down to the root of being like, hey, I need to move because it's giving me the energy to keep up and actually play with my kids. And that's really important now, but it's also a long-term.
Well, we were saying, how, for, with the kids being home all day, just how much more energy that takes. And, kudos to my wife who's, right now she's home with both of our kids all the time. And, when I'm there with them, definitely by the end of the day, I'm tired. So, I can't imagine what it's like for her after, 4 or 5 days in a row of that. And I do think it's a valuable why for people to get into, not just now, like we said, with the online and not having the face-to-face accountability so much, but also when you're in the gym. Because more than ever, being able to show up for your family, being able to be there for your kids, I think, as parents, I'm sure, actually, I'll ask you, how do you feel like your personal, approach to health and lifestyle has changed since you've had kids? Has it changed the way you think about your own health?
Absolutely. I've taken, a real shift from the athlete identity, the competitive identity, to sustainability, right? And for me, it's if it's 5 minutes of movement or just going for a walk, that's enough. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And that's another conversation we can get into as well. But that has pivoted for me in terms of sustainable long-term solutions so that I can continue.
Yeah. And I think about that, especially again, online, offline doesn't really matter. A lot of what we're saying today applies in both cases, but let's say somebody's training and they're, kind of going old school or a CrossFit style, hardcore, traditional, where it's just crushing yourself and understand with the system that you've built and we've worked together, this Move by Design training system still has a lot of the things that, we loved about CrossFit in terms of the strength training and some of the challenging movements. But also I think it recognizes that if I'm going to work out 200 times this year, that's a lot better than working out 115 times with big gaps of injury in between.
Absolutely. Yeah. Consistency is really key, right? Over anything, regardless, program, everything, consistency is the number one indicator.
And I'm sure you've seen that in your clients too. And so this goes very directly to people working at home, because I think, you probably hear from people, well, if I can't come into the gym, if I can't lift, if I can't deadlift, what's the point?
Absolutely.
But that's not necessarily true, right?
No, it's that all or nothing mentality. And I've had a lot of conversations with clients about that. Like, I don't have access to this. I don't have any equipment. I only have this piece of equipment. If I can't do my full training program, then why do anything at all?
Right.
And that's where we have to now reflect and address in this current time, then where can we find the value in the 5-minute, in the 10-minute workout? Right. Where is that providing you value in your day? That eventually we can get back to those full workouts, but for now we can pivot and we can change our ideas around what that looks like.
And, you go back to this adaptability. I think getting into a habit, right? And we'll talk next about some structure, but let's say the habit is 10 minutes a day doing, just maybe all you can do is squats and push-ups, and you got to do the same repeated workout every day. If this were to continue, and, obviously we're hoping that it doesn't continue for, extensive time, but let's say it did continue, or somebody wanted to continue with an online training model. There's no reason why they couldn't then evolve to adding new equipment, to setting up a home space. We'll talk about why still coaching and accountability and correct programming is valuable, whether you're in a gym or out of a gym. But, understand where our clients are at today doesn't mean that's where they're going to be in 3 months. We'll have to adapt with the times, but, creating some type of structure, as you said, 5 or 10 minutes. So what's the advice you've been giving to your clients now in terms of building a structure? They come to you and they say, okay, fine, I'm convinced I need to train, I need to do this, but I've got my kids at home, I've got to work from home. What are some of the strategies you've put in place that have been successful?
Absolutely. So one of the things I work with our clients on is creating a very specific weekly outline. If you haven't ever worked from home, this is a whole new world that you're existing in, right? If you don't have that clear, distinct separation between work life and home life, and you've got kids and everything is distracting, it's easy to just let your day go by and you don't really get a whole lot of anything done. And you're like, it's 8:00. What's happened with my day?
Totally.
So creating a routine and a structure for every day of the week, and this is something I do myself as well personally, is I sit down every Sunday and I write down to the time what I'm doing. And I always start with my own, call it self-care work, if you will. Right. It could be your exercise. Maybe if you do any, breathing exercises or journaling, what have you. And I make sure that I pencil that in first, because it's easy to let that stuff slide. Sure. You have to look after your kids. You have to look after all the other things. And if you leave yourself last, that's when you start to feel tired, feel burnt out a little bit. So I'd say, we're going to sit down.
And I don't want to gloss over that. That's a huge, huge point that I think a lot of people don't get, right? They automatically look at it and they say, all right, here's my whole week. Where can I fit my workout in? Right. And then they're coming to you saying, I just don't have time to work out. I've got the kids. And of course, your advice is great advice, which is, well, flip it, figure out where you're going to put your stuff and then put everything else in around that. I know that's probably a mental struggle for a lot of clients.
Absolutely. It's not something that people are used to doing, right? I think even just the concept of putting me first, sometimes people have an uncomfortable relationship with that. But if you're framing it from a place that if I'm looking after my needs and I can look after everybody else around me in a better capacity, then it's not coming from a selfish point of view. It's coming from well, if I can fill my cup up, then now I have the energy to spread that around. Right.
And like anything, going back to the first point you made, which is having a why, if your why is big enough, then you'll figure it out, because every challenge that comes up, somebody's got to watch the kids there's always a solution if the why is big enough. Why don't the kids do the workout with you? Why don't you hold the kids while you do the workout? Put them on your back. I mean, it depends, obviously age related. For us, to me, and we're not a big digital device family. We'd rather actually watch TV. Usually when the kids want to play on they call them iPads. They're not even, it's like an Android thing. I always say, they're broken, guys. They're broken. I'm really sorry. I got to get that fixed. And then when they come, like, oh my God, Dad, you guys got it fixed. I'm like, yep, we got it fixed up. It's working right now.
That's perfect. Dad's a hero.
But I do think there's a time and a place for that. And, if you're looking at the value, I don't have a problem with sticking the kids on the TV for 30 minutes, watching a show they enjoy, especially when it's not something that they're doing a lot of.
Right.
And I think that's something a parent can do, especially if they're not watching TV or on devices, the other 12 hours of the day.
Exactly. And I think right now, especially with parents trying to play the role of everybody, you're trying to be a parent, you're trying to also do work, you're trying to be a teacher, potentially, depending on the age of your kids. And we're not set up to try to take on every single role at at once.
Right.
So being a little bit easy on yourself and say, hey, if I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to just go do a little bit of exercise and my kid is going to be on their iPad for a few minutes, I'm not going to beat myself up over this. I don't have to be doing everything with them all the time. Right. And it's that conversation of allowing that.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for, we hear from our clients a lot, both probably in the gym. I hear from our chiropractic clients a lot that, they have always wanted to improve their productivity. Now's the time, right?
Absolutely.
Now's a great chance to do it. Getting up earlier, right? Things that they said they wanted to do. It's almost a necessity now that they need to do it.
And sometimes you can have those, potentially uncomfortable conversations of, are we really taking responsibility at this point, right? Because like you said, if you have a why, you will find the time. And if you really look at where your day is, I'm sure there is 15 to 20 minutes in there somewhere. If you really were honest with yourself at what you're doing, scrolling social media, what time are you getting up? What time are you going to bed? So many different factors. Your day is passing by, but if you really take a look at it, we can find that time.
And I think what you're saying, just the idea of structure in general, right? Is right now with people home, it's just easy to throw it out and say, I'll get up when I get up. We'll do this when we do that. But no, you're right. I think you got to schedule that in, whether it be getting up earlier or having another plan in place. So, let's assume we've got, people, they've dug into their why, they're feeling really good about it, because I think it's almost like this flow chart. At any point, if people jump off of here, then there's really not much we can do. If your why isn't big enough, there's not a whole lot that you or I can say to them to get them to change that. They're going to have to suffer the consequences, not enjoy the results, and then eventually circle back around to the conversation. But let's say, they've got their why. Let's say they've got some stuff in place, but now let's say, two things, and you can answer them both. Let's say nothing changes and they're going to have to work out at home for a while. There's lots of free programs out there right now, right? I see lots of people doing free Zooms and, and the natural instinct for somebody might say, I'm just going to do these free programs, or I'm going to jump on Instagram and do a free program. What's the difference between that and having some type of paid coaching expert type program? What's the pro and con, I guess, and the rationale for doing that versus, just taking what's ever free online.
Right. I think if you're an individual who's very clear on your why and you have such a good routine down, a free workout program template might be all you need, because all you need is just something to do and you're going to go get it done. Right. And that works perfectly. For somebody who's having a little bit more challenge with the accountability of not seeing a coach, you might get through a week of a free online program, but because you don't have anybody checking in on you, that might start to fall off. Right. And that's where you're really going to see the difference between actually working with a coach who's going to, whether it be on a coaching call or email support, is going to be checking in and saying, hey, John, what's going on? You didn't send me your workout from today. Where are you at? How can we help? What's going on? And that's the big value add of working with.
So with your clients, what is it? I'm just curious, as you say this now, you say send me your workout. What are some of the things that you guys do with your coaching clients that are continuing to work with you in an online online setting?
Yeah, so we use an app called Train Heroic, and all of our programming comes through there for all of our clients. Okay. And I can actually go in. It's been great because they've added some new features, obviously, with the way things have changed, that I can actually take a look at all the data and see who's completing their workouts, what people are doing. So I can send everybody a quick little message and be like, hey, I saw you've missed the last few days. Right. What's going on? Maybe it's been a week. Hey, let's check in before this starts to fall off too far. Right. And so that's been a great opportunity for us. And we're also working on some new online coaching in a personalized setting as well. So custom online programming to go along with, and just an additional added amount of accountability there, where we're going to have weekly calls with people.
Nice. So what have you found then the feedback has been from your clients who, they were in the gym, maybe they then started with your free Zooms, and now they've actually elevated into doing some more specific coaching or accountability? Have they actually given feedback to say, actually, you're right, this has been really worth it? Or, what's the feedback been?
Absolutely. The majority of people who have started doing that are like, this is drastically different. And the challenge we have is getting to that place. Because once they all start, they're like, this is way better than what was happening before. You just don't necessarily know until you start doing it. And they're like, having this accountability is huge. Back in a routine, I'm feeling better. I'm consistent again. I would definitely choose this over and over again now that I know.
Well, and you think of the results too. If it's just funny what people in their mind, they'll say, well, I'll save the 30 extra bucks a week or whatever it is. But then, 8 weeks later, they're, irritated, frustrated that they've gained back 5 or 10 pounds. They're not feeling as good. They don't feel good about themselves. And you just always comes back to the same question, what's that worth? What are you getting in exchange for that?
Absolutely.
So the last thing I'm going to ask you here, Kyle, because I think, we're going to hit this situation where, life's going to get back to normal, fingers crossed, at some point here. And, for you and, at some point, probably for us with online training, you're going to have a mix of people who are doing online training and they've elevated, they're doing the coaching online, they're making an investment, they love it, but then the gym opens back up. How does a client decide, okay, what path do I go down? Because I'm going to guess there might even be a handful of clients that are just going to say, and rightfully so, you know what? I wasn't really in it for the community. I love the remote coaching. I'm going to stick with that. And then other people, if someone's trying to figure out what they should do when this happens, what do you think is some of your defining criteria for who's going to be best in what group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're already seeing some people who are really enjoying the at-home workouts, and it really, a lot of it comes down to your own personal scheduling. For people, this is just so convenient that, like you said, the community part maybe isn't as big of an issue for them. So they will gladly continue to work out from home now that they can train. They don't have to worry about coming to the gym at a specific time. They can do it at any point. And then we're going to have the people who are like, the workouts are really not actually why I'm doing this so much. It's to see the people. And those are the people that are going to come back to the gym. Now, an option that we're going to provide as well is a hybrid type of model where we are going to have in-house training, but also accountability outside of the gym as well. So if people find themselves in a bit of an in-between, they like the community, but they also like the at-home, there's an opportunity there to combine those two where they can come into classes, they can see the people, but then we can also do some work from home as well.
Gotcha. I like what you said. I love the model. And I think that, I think there's going to be an evolution. There has to be. And maybe, as we were saying earlier before we hit record, maybe that, this COVID correction, if we'll call it that, is, the mother of necessity here. It's going to create some innovation in terms of our businesses. And I think, like any time, these crises also, they create a lot of value for customers. So I think for the market, whether it's your practice, Jim, ours, the rest of Ottawa, all over the world, I mean, consumers now are going to have a lot of options, and it's going to make, I think, individual fitness professionals have to be a lot better.
Yes.
Right. You were talking earlier about kind of riding the wave early when, you were the second CrossFit, or, our strength and conditioning centers were some of the first, and it was new to everybody. And now, this style of fitness is much more popular. In fact, you could almost make the case that other than your regular big box gym is probably the next most popular form really of fitness in that sense. And so I like it. I think it's going to make us all as fitness professionals better than we were 100%. Before.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the people who are willing to adapt and grow are the ones that are going to really make a change for the better for the consumer. And those who really aren't willing to change their models or adapt are the ones that are going to fall by the wayside. And, like you said, that's just going to be better for the consumer. We're going to have more options available for them.
Well, and to kind of close it up with this thought as well, I love what you guys are doing with the idea of just health coaching. I mean, we do it in our Life by Design practices when we work with patients, but I'll be honest, in our gym, we don't do as much of that unless somebody's a patient in our corrective care facility.
Right.
We coach the classes, and, we got a bit of our community, and hey, good, you got your Facebook group and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that people who are gym members only, who maybe haven't integrated themselves into the rest of the Life by Design system yet, I think that they would very much value from that. And if we truly believe in this blueprint of Eat, Move, Think, and Power by Design, then it just makes sense that the people only doing the fitness portion, at least getting some exposure to Eating by Design, some exposure to structure and recovery and kind of these other components, and then, morphing that in. It's not the workouts that they're paying for as much as, having somebody there to essentially coach them. So I love the fact that that's becoming a new trend for you guys, and hopefully other professionals too.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I think, the longer that I'm in this industry, the real value is in the coaching. And that's a whole life approach to coaching. Agreed. So if this exposes more people to that, then this is going to be better for everybody. It's going to be better for the coaches to really be able to make a difference in people's lives. And it's going to create some awareness, I think, for individuals to see, okay, fitness is just one piece of the puzzle. There's some other things that I can address here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kyle, thanks for coming on the Life by Design podcast today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think we should make this a regular routine. I know we've got lots to talk about, and the Move by Design component of the podcast could use a little love. So nothing better than bringing on another expert to have a conversation with me.
Absolutely. That sounds great. I'd love to come back on.
Okay, perfect. Guys, thank you so much for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.